The gas station was almost too quiet, one of those roadside stops where time seemed to stretch, thick and unmoving. The kind of place you'd miss if you blinked while driving by. An old Coca-Cola sign swung from rusty chains above the store's awning, creaking softly in the late summer breeze. Paint peeled from the pumps like bark from a dying tree. And under the sweltering Missouri sun, everything shimmered with that golden blur that comes only at the edge of a long, exhausted afternoon. Naomi Ellis pulled her black SUV into the lot with slow, deliberate control. Dust rose behind her like a curtain falling on the final act of a long drive. She wore dark jeans, a fitted gray jacket, and simple sunglasses. No insignia, no badge. To the passing eye, she looked like a tired woman in her early 50s on her way home. But that was the point. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent decades in the shadows of justice. People called on her many things: brilliant, relentless, intimidating. But not today. Today, she was just Naomi. Tired, quiet, anonymous. She stepped out, stretched her back, and opened the gas cap. The pump clunked to life. As she leaned against the car, letting the fuel flow, Naomi allowed herself a rare moment of stillness. It was supposed to be a brief stop, a soda, a full tank, and the last stretch of road before home. Then came the sound, gravel crunching, tires creeping across the lot like something was hunting. She didn't look up. She didn't have to. That sound, that slow roll of patrol tires over loose stone, was one she knew too well. She kept her eyes forward, body relaxed. Inside, though, her mind sharpened. The cruiser pulled to a stop behind her vehicle. A Benton County Sheriff's Department logo faded on the door. The engine idled. Then the door creaked open, followed by the heavy step of boots hitting ground. Naomi sighed inwardly. "Ma'am," the voice said, gravelly, thick with authority worn too loosely. "You lost?" She turned slowly, hands visible. "Just getting west end by Take gas," she replied, calm and measured. Her voice held no edge, but no softness either. Deputy Chad Rourke was everything you'd expect from a man who had never been told no. Broad-shouldered, sunburned neck, mirrored sunglasses. His buzz cut looked like it had been done with a pocket knife. He scanned her from head to toe, like she didn't belong, like her presence was an offense. "Where are you from?" he asked, stepping closer. "Don't see many fancy black SUVs around here." Naomi tilted her head. "I'm passing through." "That's so?" His tone dropped. "License and registration." She reached, slowly, into her inside pocket and pulled out only her driver's license. Not the badge. Not yet. Rourke snatched it from her hand and read it out loud with mock curiosity. "Naomi Ellis." Then he narrowed his eyes. "What exactly do you do, Miss Ellis?" "I consult on federal policy," she replied, deliberately vague. Rourke stepped even closer now, chest puffed, breath hot with contempt. "Well, I don't like your tone. You got an attitude." Naomi didn't flinch, and then, without warning, he shoved her. A hard hit to the shoulder, slamming her back into the SUV door. The nozzle clattered against the side of the car, spilling a line of fuel onto the hot gravel. "Hey!" she barked, steadying herself. But Rourke wasn't finished. He leaned into the open passenger side and began rifling through her glove box without consent, tossing receipts, a protein bar, her sunglasses, like it was his right. "My registration is in the top folder," Naomi said evenly, controlling the fire building in her chest. He yanked it out, crumpled it in his fist, and turned back to her, face flushed, furious. And then he kicked her, right in the shin, a brutal, sudden blow. Naomi crumpled to the ground with the cowboy's jeans tearing against gravel and pain shooting up her leg. The pump kept ticking. Her ID landed in the dirt. "That's where you belong," he muttered. Then he walked away, just like that. But what Chad Rourke didn't see, what would change everything, was the teenage boy standing by the ice machine. Tyler Moon, 17 years old, holding a phone low at his hip, recording every second, his hands shaking but his aim true. And Naomi, she didn't stay down. Blood on her shin, grit in her palm, she stood up slowly, carefully. Not just as a woman, not just as a federal officer, but as something else entirely. The start of a reckoning. Naomi Ellis sat behind the wheel of her SUV parked just off the next exit in a forgotten corner of rural Missouri, her breath shallow but steady. Blood still welled from the tear in her jeans, staining the fabric a deep rust red. The pain in her leg pulsed like a drumbeat, but pain was familiar. Pain was manageable. What concerned her more was the silence, the kind that follows a choice, and she had just made one. She opened her secure phone, fingers moving with precision, and tapped a contact buried deep in her encrypted database. Rafael Cruz, her most trusted field operative and longtime aide. "Talk to me," came the voice on the other end, low, urgent. "He kicked me," Naomi said, no emotion in her tone. "Gas station off Route 19, Deputy Chad Rourke. I didn't show the badge. Not yet." There was a pause. "You okay?" "I'm upright." "Do you need evac?" "No, I need a name search. Full disciplinary history, complaint logs, anyone linked to him, especially higher-ups. Send it securely to my alternate channel." "Already moving," Raphael replied. Naomi, she didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both knew what this meant. By the time Naomi pulled into the parking lot of a quiet roadside diner, her phone was buzzing with encrypted pings. She scanned the contents between bites of lukewarm pie and sips of black coffee. What she saw made her stomach clench harder than the pain in her leg. 4 formal complaints have been filed against Deputy Chad Rourke in the past 6 years, all dismissed. 3 involved young black men between 18 and 25. One was a Latina nurse pulled over for a taillight. All cases resolved internally. No suspension, no discipline. Naomi traced the approval signatures. They all led to one name, Sheriff Brenda Holtz, a 3-term incumbent, untouchable. No scandals, no questions, no opposition. Of course, Naomi's lips pressed into a line. She flagged the files, cross-referenced them with state oversight reports. Then she opened a blank document and typed a single title, Marlow County Pattern Review, Phase 1. This was bigger than Rourke. It was systemic. It was a culture fed by silence and denial. And now it was in her crosshairs. Outside, the Missouri sky began to bruise with dusk. She stood, tossed a few bills on the table, and walked with a limp back to her car. Every step was a reminder, not of weakness, but of proof that this wasn't theory. This was personal. This was lived. Meanwhile, across town, a 17-year-old named Tyler Moon sat on his bedroom floor, staring at the raw footage on his phone. He hadn't edited it, hadn't touched a frame. It didn't need polish. It was already too real. The video showed the moment the deputy raised his boot, the sharp snap, the fall, and Naomi, not crying, not screaming, just getting up. Tyler hesitated only once before uploading the file to his anonymous TikTok account. He captioned it. He thought she was nobody. He was wrong. Justice starts here. Less than an hour later, the video hit 10,000 views. By midnight, it was on Twitter. By dawn, it was national. Naomi's face, blurred by sunglasses but unmistakably poised, was everywhere. The public didn't know her name yet, but they knew what they were seeing, and they were furious. Across the digital landscape, users began asking the same question. Who is she? Back in her motel room, Naomi sat cross-legged on the stiff mattress, her leg wrapped in tossas and a towel full of ice. She was scanning her laptop, sifting through contracts, campaign donations, and court records. That's when she found it. a payment record from 6 months earlier. Holtz's re-election campaign receiving a donation from Langston Partners, a shell company tied to Senator Peter Langston, a former law enforcement officer, now head of the state committee that reviews police misconduct. Her breath caught, not from surprise but from confirmation. Langston, the man who tried to block her last investigation into cross-state police trafficking collusion. The man who still thought she played politics instead of chess. Naomi picked up her phone and called Raphael. Pull every tie between Holtz and Langston. I want donor logs, emails, and side contracts, especially private security firms or ghost vendors linked to Marlowe County. You think he's the top? No, she said, eyes narrowing, but he's part of the structure. And the only way to crack the wall is to find the weight-bearing bricks. As Raphael got to work, Naomi leaned back, hands folded behind her head. Chad Rourke thought he had the upper hand, but he just assaulted a federal officer. And worse, for him, he didn't even know it yet. Tomorrow the silence would break. And the system that taught him this behavior? It was about to face someone who knew how to break systems wide open. By sunrise, the video had crossed 1 million views. It was clipped, shared, captioned, and dissected. Some paused it at the moment Naomi fell. Others focused on the smirk on Deputy Rourke's face. But the part that stuck, what people kept replaying, was not the violence. It was the recovery. A woman rising from gravel, bloodied but composed, face unreadable. That image had become a symbol, but symbols, Naomi Ellis knew, could be dismissed. Structures could not. She sat at a small desk inside the FBI's regional outpost in Jefferson City, Missouri, an unmarked beige building that looked like it had forgotten its purpose. The badge was back on her belt, clipped low and partially obscured. Not a statement, just a tool, like everything else she was about to use. Raphael Cruz entered with a flash drive and a stiff brow. We've got something, he said. Naomi turned. Talk. He plugged in the drive. On screen, donor logs, internal memos, and state-level expense reports. Langston's name appears more than once, Raphael said. He's funneled money into Sheriff Holtz's campaigns through no less than 3 shell firms. And, he paused, pulling up a scanned document. He recommended Rourke to a tactical training grant 6 years ago. Fast-tracked it. No evaluation required. Naomi leaned forward. That's not all, Raphael continued. Langston sits on the oversight board that dismisses police misconduct complaints. He voted on 3 of Rourke's dismissals. All unanimous, all sealed. There it was, the orchard. This wasn't about one bad deputy with a temper and a badge. This was about an entire ecosystem. One that grew men like Chad Rourke and protected them from the sun. Naomi stood, her knees still stiff beneath the bandages. The pain kept her grounded. She welcomed it. Pain, after all, was proof that the wound hadn't silenced her yet. Start mapping it, she said. Not just the players, the pipeline, who funds whom, who signs what, and how many complaints have vanished in the past 10 years. I want patterns, and I want them fast. Across town, Sheriff Brenda Holtz sat at her desk in the Marlowe County Sheriff's Office, flanked by flags, polished plaques, and the stale air of unchecked authority. She was watching the video again, for the 3rd time. God damn it, Chad, she muttered under her breath. You had one job. Her aide knocked softly at the door. We've got reporters asking for comment. National outlets, CBS, MSNBC, even The Guardian. Holtz pinched the bridge of her nose. Tell them we're cooperating fully and conducting an internal review. Ma'am, do we have one? No, she snapped, but they don't know that. Meanwhile, Naomi was piecing together the forest behind the single tree. The deeper she dug, the worse it became. Down 11 deputies under Holtz's command had excessive force complaints. Not one resulted in formal discipline. A county clerk named Will Fenner had misplaced at least 7 body cam footages, all involving officers tied to Holtz's inner circle. And a local judge, Judge Silas Boone, had thrown out 3 civil suits, citing procedural gaps that mysteriously aligned with the days the sheriff's office's digital logs had gone missing. Raphael's voice echoed across the conference room. "This isn't mismanagement. It's design." Naomi nodded. "It's a structure pretending to be chaos." She opened a clean document and titled it, "The Rotten Orchard, Network Analysis." She began typing names, dates, amounts, connections. Each entry is a crack in the foundation. Each pattern is another brick dislodged. This was no longer a response to being kicked. This was an audit of everything that allowed that kick to happen. That evening, an anonymous email pinged Naomi's private inbox. Subject, "You need to see this." Attached, a grainy surveillance photo, Rourke, Holtz, and Senator Langston seated in a dimly lit back room, heads bowed close, papers spread before them. No uniforms, no press, just power being managed in secret. No timestamp, no location. But Naomi knew what it meant. It meant they'd planned for this. They had met, strategized, and possibly discussed her. Not as a federal officer, not as a leader, but as a threat. And if they saw her that way, she had already won the first battle. Naomi forwarded the image to Raphael with a single line. "We go louder." The orchard had been exposed. Now it was time to set it on fire. The air inside the safe house was dry, still, like something holding its breath. Naomi Ellis stood over a makeshift war table, laptop open, documents fanned like cards, names circled in red ink. Across from her, Raphael Cruz scrolled through an encrypted channel, tracking chatter from various law enforcement back doors. A storm was building, and this time, they weren't going to wait for it to hit. They were going to pull it in. Naomi tapped the surveillance photo again, the one of Rourke, Holtz, and Langston in that windowless room. The grainy evidence didn't prove conspiracy, but it proved proximity. Intent. That was enough to start playing offense. "We need a controlled leak," she said, fingers steepled beneath her chin. "Something credible, just enough to bait them." Raphael looked up. "You think they'll bite?" "They're scared. Paranoia makes sloppy men aggressive. Let's give them a reason to act before they think." They called it Operation Echo. It began with a whisper, a series of fabricated rumors pushed subtly through burners accounts, anonymous tips, and encrypted channels. The story? Naomi was preparing to meet a DOJ investigator in a derelict courthouse west of Marlow County. She'd be carrying damning files, audio, financials, recorded testimony. The message was clear. She had something big, and she was about to drop it. The trap was laid. The bait, a laptop bag stuffed with blank hard drives, a printed dossier filled with fake redacted evidence, and a burner phone GPS tracked to the courthouse's 3rd floor. Naomi herself would be the lure. She sat alone in the dusty courtroom at 4:30 p.m., sunlight pouring through broken panes, illuminating cobwebs that glistened like threads of strategy. A hidden body cam blinked under her lapel. Her breathing was calm, her eyes sharp. Across the street, Raphael watched through binoculars, eyes locked on the courthouse doors. 4:37 p.m. A black SUV rolled in. No plates. Then a second. 3 men exited, 2 in plain clothes, one with a sheriff's department radio still clipped to his hip. Off-duty deputies. Armed. No search warrants. No hesitation. They didn't knock. They kicked the side door in. Inside, Naomi heard the echo of boot steps. The adrenaline hit, but she didn't move. She didn't flinch. Instead, she pressed her heel harder into the floor, anchored. One of the men spotted her down the hall, eyes narrowing. "You think you're clever?" he sneered. Naomi's voice was ice. "You're trespassing." Another man grabbed the laptop bag, rifled through its contents, growing frustrated. "It's garbage." "No," Naomi said, standing now. "You are." That was the cue. Within 90 seconds, two federal agents stormed the building from the front entrance, body armor visible, guns holstered but ready. FBI, one barked. Hands where we can see them. The three intruders froze, caught in the act. The cameras caught everything. The illegal entry, the search, the threats. Naomi stepped forward, eyes locked on the one who had called her garbage. You broke in to silence me, she said. Now you'll explain that in federal court. Outside, Raphael sent the footage to a secure FIA server and uploaded a 30-second teaser clip. No faces, no names, just the sound of a man saying, "She's done. You hear me? Done." The clip detonated across social media within an hour. That night, Naomi and Raphael reviewed responses from internal affairs, DOJ legal teams, and federal prosecutors. Holtz had been placed on administrative leave. Rourke remained suspended. Langston's name was flagged in multiple PAC investigations, but Naomi wasn't celebrating. She was calculating. This was the second line of defense, she said quietly. The one they send to scare you into silence. Raphael nodded, which means the first line's still behind the curtain. And that, Naomi said, opening a fresh file on her laptop, is where we go next. She titled the document, Chain of Command. As midnight rolled in, a fire crackled in the old safe house fireplace. Naomi sat wrapped in a blanket, her knee iced again, eyes half closed but mind racing. She wasn't thinking about what had happened. She was thinking about who had made it happen and who still thought they could get away with it. Somewhere out there, someone had made a call, authorized the threats, pushed for the suspension, greenlit the attack. Not Holtz, not Rourke, not even Langston, someone above them. And Naomi was going to find them. The orchard had been revealed. Now it was time to start pulling roots. The morning air in Marlowe County felt heavier than usual, thick with tension, anticipation, and the buzz of news vans lining the courthouse steps. Flags hung limp in the still air. Protest signs swayed slightly, not from wind, but from the trembling hands of the people holding them. And then the crowd hushed. Naomi Ellis stepped out of the black sedan, Raphael at her side, and walked up the stone steps with the quiet, unshakable power of someone who had nothing left to prove, but everything left to defend. Her left leg was still bandaged under her slacks, her gait still stiff, but her spine straighter than ever. She wore no sunglasses this time. She wanted the country to see her eyes. Every camera turned, every mic extended forward like a question waiting to be answered. She stopped at the podium, brushed the microphone with her fingertips once to test the signal, then spoke. My name is Dr. Naomi Ellis. I am a federal agent. I am a mother. I am a black woman, and I am no longer asking to be seen. The crowd erupted in applause, but Naomi didn't smile. She didn't come here to feel uplifted. She came to lift the veil. She continued. This past week, I was assaulted by a deputy who never stopped to ask who I was. He didn't care. I wasn't a threat to him because of what I did. I was a threat to him because of what I look like. But let me be clear. This is not a story about one man's cruelty. It is about a system that nurtured it, protected it, repeated it. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she named names. Sheriff Brenda Holtz, Senator Peter Langston, Judge Boone, the county clerk, even private firms linked to backdoor contracts. Then, with perfect stillness, she said, and this morning I turned over the final piece of evidence, a video of all three sitting in a warehouse. No badges, no robes, no titles, plotting how to silence me. That ends today. The cameras clicked like a thunderstorm. Chants began rising from the crowd. Break the orchard! Justice for Naomi! No more silent. But Naomi wasn't finished. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for reform. And if that means pulling every rotten root out of this ground, then I will dig until my hands bleed. She stepped down from the podium as dozens of DOJ officials moved past her into the courthouse. Arrest warrants had already been signed, indictments unsealed. Inside, Sheriff Holt sat slouched in a courtroom chair, pale and silent. Senator Langston's legal team had tried to negotiate a quiet surrender the night before. It was denied. Deputy Chad Rourke had already been booked. The orchard wasn't just burning, it was collapsing. 2 weeks later, Naomi submitted her formal resignation, not because she was defeated, but because she was finally free to speak without limits. Her final act as a federal agent wasn't a raid or an arrest. It was a report, a 97-page document titled The Marlowe Pattern: How Power Protects Itself. It included timelines, network diagrams, financial disclosures, and behavioral audits. She leaked it through an independent watchdog group. It became required reading for congressional hearings on civil rights abuses. And as it spread, something even more remarkable happened. People listened. Students cited her in classrooms. Advocates used her blueprint to investigate other counties. A mayor in Michigan suspended 5 officers after discovering eerily similar patterns. And in a rural county in Alabama, a young girl hung Naomi's picture in her locker with the words, "She stood, so will I." 1 year later, Naomi returned to the gas station. The pumps had been replaced. The gravel was repaved. The building is freshly painted. But just off to the side, where she had fallen, stood a small bronze plaque embedded in a stone pedestal. It read, "On this spot, a woman refused to stay down, and a system finally had to, in honor of Naomi Ellis." There were no reporters, no cameras, just Naomi, in silence, the good kind. She stood there for a long while, hands tucked in her coat pockets, staring not at the plaque but at the horizon. Then she got back in her car and drove away. Not to forget, not to escape, but toward whatever came next. The life lesson: justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it begins with one person refusing to stay on the ground. Naomi Ellis didn't fight for recognition. She fought for the truth. And the truth, when documented, exposed, and shared, has the power to dismantle even the most protected systems. This story reminds us, systemic abuse doesn't sustain itself by accident. It survives because too many stay silent. Real courage isn't always in shouting. It's in standing, in recording, in documenting, in outlasting. You don't need a badge to bring change, but if you have one, use it for those who don't. Because somewhere in another town, on another dusty road, someone else is being kicked, not just by a boot, but by a system. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember Naomi Ellis, not as a victim, but as the storm that followed.